It's Neil Achampong.
Achumpo?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, good evening, all members of the board. I'm here as a concerned parent to speak in regards to policy 443. And there is an issue that actually bothers me about it, and I want to just make that clear if there will be a review of the policy in regards to the fact that asking my child could be able to become a transgender, and then a school teacher or somebody else in the school system would help the child to make that decision without going through a parent is actually disturbing. I'm a pastor. I take care of people. Sometimes the temptation is to get caught up in regulation and policies, and we forget that regulation and policies are there to serve people. We're there because of people. You were elected because of people. And I would always respect the great work you do for this county. And I applaud you for it. But I think that policy needs to be looked at again. Because if my 5-year-old is crossing the street, a parental instinct would be, I would never allow the child to cross the street by herself. Because the first line of safety for a child is the parent. And I do believe that we need to go back to those basic things. About, I think a couple of weeks ago, my daughter was sick. They needed to give her some pain medication. They called me, and then they asked me, you need to come here and give the medication yourself. Now, sometimes I sign paperwork for sunscreen, parental, and every simple little thing, there is a parental consent, except this. So I'm asking myself, what's going on here? I see a door that is being opened for predators who are gradually creeping into the school system to destroy. Your good work will be destroyed. So I ask you to go back and look at policy 443. I would always pray for you and trust that you do a good work. But for this one thing, please reconsider and let's change it, because we are building a society that ought to thrive tomorrow and not to create kids who are confused. I am licensed to counsel, and I deal with people every single day. And I realize there are many who are confused. So please, I'm asking you, go back again and look at policy 443 and ask that parents become part of the process, because I do not believe this is right. Thank you.
Next up, I have Tom Newmark. Miss Rich, I ask you to start the clock.
Sorry. You ready for me to start?
Yep.
Okay, can you reset me? Because I lost some time there with the applause.
Yes. So I'll just ask, we have a lot of public comment. I'm going to stick to the 3 minutes. I've allowed a brief applause, and then we've moved on. I waited the same amount of time, and then I just asked the clock to start. So anyone, if your applause continues, you're going to take time from the next speaker. I don't even know what all the topics are. Mr. Newmark, the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Great. I agree with Dean Rose, who said on March 8th that the Board of Education is not a medical board. The good news is that you don't have to be a medical board to apply common sense in your policy role. You can simply recognize that parents have different views on gender dysphoria and allow them to choose how to support their kids. That's what our proposed policy does. Your current policy forces all parents to agree to affirmative therapy or have their school conducted in secret. This violates parents' rights and risks legal action against you. Our opponents need to consider what would happen if this situation were reversed. How would parents wanting their children's preferred names and pronouns be used feel if schools had a policy that only used their birth name and biological pronouns and kept that secret from those parents? Wouldn't this be a violation of their rights? Of course it would. Our opponents support schools conducting affirmative therapy without parents' consent, citing safety concerns about homelessness, ignoring the safety concerns of other parents who reasonably believe that social affirmation can lead to irreversible medical and surgical interventions. The evidence shows that it does, which is why England, Sweden, Finland, and Norway have all moved away from it. You are leaders of a diverse county. Shouldn't all parents' concerns be reflected in your policies? Opponents made the astonishing claim that minors have a fundamental right to hide their gender dysphoria and name changes from parents, and that schools are legally required to collude with minors to keep this secret. But no such right or requirement exists. Federal law guarantees parent access to education records, and Maryland law allows parents to veto their child's name change request. You are not legally required to keep secrets from parents. You are making a policy choice that other Maryland school boards are not making. Opponents made another incredible claim that because a few bad parents might harm their children due to gender dysphoria, the many good parents are not allowed to know their children's gender concerns. Child abuse for any reason is illegal, and our schools already have procedures in place to deal with it. Our opponents misrepresented the Trevor Project study, which found that only 0.3% of gay and transgender people aged 13 to 18 are currently homeless, which includes temporarily staying at a friend or family member's house. For perspective, we are talking about 73 currently homeless teens out of 19,671. No data was presented about how many of these 73 had been kicked out of the house, and the methodology behind the study has been criticized as biased to achieve its results. Parents are responsible for their own children's welfare. Schools, even in a noble attempt to pursue perfect outcomes, don't get to trample on the rights of the many good parents based on the misdeeds of a few. Our proposed policy recognizes the right of our opponents to choose affirmative therapy for their kids, but also our right not to. To our opponents, I ask, since we support your rights, why won't you support ours? Could everyone who agrees with me please stand?
Thank you. Next up, I have Hope Bonanno. Next up, I have Trudy Tribbles and Dorothy Hughes, Ann Fortner, and then Katie Riley. And then that'll be it for our
Hi.
comment. 3 minutes.
As everyone in this room and those watching at home probably know, and if you don't, you might want to pay attention, FCPS has a policy called Policy 443. The official title of the policy is Creating and Welcoming and affirming schools for transgender and gender nonconforming students. The policy statement reads, the policy is designed to provide an overarching framework and assurances that all students will be safe, welcome, and affirmed. I have no problem whatsoever with all students being safe and welcomed. In fact, that's how it should be. But it tells us right there in policy statement that FCPS will affirm a student's gender identity. Since when does FCPS accept or affirm a child's self-diagnosis, especially without some sort of confirmation of a diagnosis from either the child's pediatrician or primary care physician or any other medical or mental health professional? And also, our children should not have to behave in any such way as to affirm this disillusionment of another child. They also should not be sent to the principal's office for the crime of calling another child by his or her actual legal name instead of a preferred pronoun. Hang on, folks, it gets worse. FCPS's policy 443 states that the child's self-diagnosis as another gender other than their biological sex, that child can also use the restroom and locker room that corresponds to the chosen gender identity of that child. So a biological male having full male biological parts can use the female restroom and locker rooms with all of the other cisgender or biological females while they're changing for sports competitions or using restroom facilities. The other thing is, on overnight field trips, the policy states, Policy 443, will allow students the opportunity to room with others according to their gender identity. So it's the same as the restrooms and the locker rooms, with a biological male with full biological male parts becoming an absolutely overnight roommate with our cisgender biological female daughters. They're going to be cisgender biological females that Policy 443 will make very, very uncomfortable. FCPS cannot create and have a policy that tries to solve a problem for a minority member of the student population at the expense of the majority of the student population. That's just trading one problem for another. This is not supporting every child every day, as the FCPS slogan says. It's favoring one minority part of the student population and discriminating against the other majority part of the student population. Policy 443 needs to be replaced before all the lawsuits start rolling in. Thank you.
Next up. Ms. Al?
Sure. So I want to thank everybody, the public who are here in attendance tonight and those who are viewing from the comfort of their homes. For those who are here tonight, your commitment to the students of Frederick County Public Schools is noted and appreciated. Many of you guys have been here before. You've expressed your concerns, and you are diligent in returning and keeping us accountable. Thank you. I also want to speak to those who talked about Policy 443. For those who oppose the changes to Policy 443, I really want to ask that you take the time to digest the information that has been presented. You'll find that the proposed changes don't exclude safety measures for the students who are identifying as transgender. We all want to be recognized for who we are, but that does not mean that you're entitled to protections that exclude the right of others. Policy 443 does need to be reviewed and updated. The development of the current policy may have been based on good intentions and advocacy for special interest groups, but it certainly does not serve Frederick County Public Schools in reducing its liability. It is exclusionary in its intent to protect one group of students over another and removes the parent from their right to make decisions for their child. It also does not provide the parent or the student the information they need to make informed choices. All of these points have been made tonight, and I am in agreement with those points. There is also something else that was brought forward tonight, which is something that I think all of us need to think about. This is the only policy in place that excludes parental involvement and purposely keeps information from a parent based on the premise that it is protecting the child. Thank you.
Mr. Bass?
Well, I'm all for public comment. I do agree with taking it to the policy committee and moving it forward. I don't think that we should be ambiguous in language in any policy. I do support, though, what Mr. Jay had suggested. I think that there may be opportunities at certain meetings, depending on what's being discussed, to have the option to go longer with public comment. I mean, these people are spending their time, like we are here in the evening. They have things to do. They have families. I signed on for this. I knew what I was getting myself into, somewhat. I think it's important to hear from the public. I mean, I want to hear what they have to say. I think it helps, like Ray said, to form some of your decisions. So, absolutely. But moving it to the policy committee where we really can vet out the policy.
Voices for Freedom.
Okay, so,
Good evening. My name is Heather Fletcher, and I'm speaking on behalf of our Voices for Freedom. We have been here before, and we have had the same discussions. It's been over a year since you guys have adopted the health curriculum framework. I come here today in peace, love, and respect for everyone in this room. Today is the anniversary of something called the shot heard round the world. And that was a day in 1975 when the first shot was heard in Lexington, Concord, making the start of the American Revolution. And today I come here to make a loving shot heard round the world. And this shot is truth. We will not live by lies. When you confuse young children and tell them they could be a boy if they're a girl, or a girl if they are a boy, when you put them in dangerous situations like what Policy 443 does, where just over in Loudoun County you had a girl raped in the behind from a disturbed young man who dressed in a skirt, and the school board covered it up and moved this young boy, to another school, and he did it again. I don't know how in your right mind you think it's okay to have a man or a boy in a girl's bathroom and vice versa. It's dangerous. When you confuse young children and put them on this path of affirmation only, turn this one backwards. Sorry. This is what ends up happening down the road. This is what it looks like when you remove healthy breasts from a young woman. This is what it looks like when you take flesh and skin from a forearm. They also take it from a thigh to make a penis for a woman to pretend to be a man. This is not truth. This does not make you a man. No matter what anybody lies to these children about and tells them, it is a lie. We can flip. Okay, so. The truth is, a man cannot be a woman, and a woman cannot be a man. The truth is, if children are experiencing gender identity disorder, they need their parents' help. If they are truly experiencing gender identity disorder, they need their parents' help. They need mental help. Doing this to their body does not help them. First, you start them on affirmative therapy, then they're going to go to hormones and steroids, which are known aggressive things that make your body aggressive. You got antidepressants, antipsychotics, then they're going to start mutilating their bodies, all because they didn't get the right help they needed when they were a child. All because potentially people are introducing ideas to children that should never be in their heads, a thought that they would never, ever think of on their own. No boy wakes up thinking this unless they have a true gender identity disorder. They don't think that, okay? You're not helping these children. Quit lying to yourselves if you believe you are. Sorry. All right. This is filth. You're filling our children's minds with filth. Karen Yoho, Sue Johnson, Jason Johnson, and David Bass, I truly believe when you adopted this framework that was brought to you by the state superintendent at the time, that was literally a one-page letter with, hey, we think this is really great. The science says this is great for children. And then signed by a bunch of organizations that are vested in getting this curriculum passed because they make money. And this was enough to say, okay, great, pass it. Let's teach our kindergarteners that they can be boys and they can be girls if they want to. They can be whatever you want. I listened to a teacher bragging on TikTok the other night about how her pronoun lesson. Sue Johnson, again, I would like your attention.
Well,
I appreciate
You
you.
have 2 seconds left, Ms.
Thank
Fletcher.
you.
I was trying to give you a cue that your time was up.
It's fine. Thank
for
you.
your public comment. Katie Curitan? Yeah. Thank you. I have Mamay Jawa and then Rob Bowersox. That's what I have on my list. So,
I'm a former middle and high school teacher with a master's degree in curriculum and instruction. From childhood, I was often singled out as different. Classmates asked me probing, sometimes absurd questions about my religion to tease me. Multiple middle and high school teachers called me out by name in front of the entire class to mock my beliefs. As a 16-year-old, I pulled up late to church one Sunday morning, and as the only person in the parking lot, I was the sole target of a picketer with a large sign shouting threats and demeaning accusations at me. As an adult, I sat through an application interview where my future employer asked me detailed questions about my religious practices and if my beliefs would be a problem were I to be offered the position, which was totally illegal. Over the years, I've been the butt of many jokes by coworkers and even friends, but my story is not uncommon. The justification for adding gender ideology into the health curriculum is typically that we want to help a marginalized group, transgender or gender nonconforming students, to be included, have visibility in the curriculum, help others become tolerant, and eliminate bullying. Wasn't I part of a marginalized group being bullied? Shouldn't I have been protected by the school? Shouldn't the school have created a curriculum to help me be more included and others be tolerant? Well, those are two different things, one might say. Your religious beliefs are a choice. Gender identity is not. Isn't it? I hear regularly that one's gender identity is fluid. It can change. One day a person might feel more like a girl, the other like neither, non-binary. There are no scientific or biological markers that would indicate one's gender identity. The only way to know one's gender identity is if one tells you. It's self-proclaimed and based on a strongly held internal feeling. That sounds awfully similar to how one's religious identity works. Can you imagine if I was similarly represented in the curriculum? We teach the great spectrum of religious identities, starting in kindergarten. Clever children's books could introduce them to all the options of religious identity. We wouldn't tell parents when those books were being read or those topics were being introduced. We debate whether parents should be allowed to opt out. And if the child of an atheist adopted a new identity, perhaps a Mormon, a Muslim, a Catholic, or a Jew, it would probably be best to conceal that from the parent. After all, if an atheist can't affirm their child's religious identity, that must not be a safe and loving home. And of course, we would pass the curriculum at the state level during COVID, in the summer, with as little parental involvement as possible. Does this sound familiar? Well, there's one significant difference. I can't think of a single religious identity that leads children to take life-altering hormones, puberty blockers, or undergo irreversible surgeries. And yet, I firmly believe public schools have no business teaching religious ideology to children, or any ideology for that matter. Thank you.